world loves to throw around the word narcissist, but most people don't really understand exactly what that means. Let's dive in. But before we go on, make sure you subscribe, hit the thumbs up, drop some comments below, questions, anything that this brings up for you. And topic ideas. I've gotten some topic ideas from you guys. We'll be making those videos too. Okay, so we're really talking about the stereotypes of that are associated with the word narcissist. And I wanted to cover three in particular that I hear the most and kind of give a little reframe. Now, I will caveat at the beginning, I'm not trying to excuse the behavior per se, but as if you've watched any of the other videos on our channel, you'll understand what I'm really doing and working to do is to destigmatize the reality of the narcissist. And what I mean is that there's a lot of ideas out there about how narcissists are evil, manipulative, bad people, causing harm on purpose. And while I'm sure there are some that describes precisely, many of us are not that way, though our behavior may look that way. And so that's what we're going to dive into a little today. So number one is self-absorbed. That's probably the most common one I've heard in my life because I'm a covert narcissist. And so it's not as quite as obvious that I have, that I'm narcissist. In fact, I didn't know for the first many decades of my life. But the way that really ends up working is that we have an intense internal processing going on. And what that means is because of the type of condition responses to our world that we learn in our childhood, becoming a narcissist, where we get most typically a mixed message of, on the one hand, you're really special for whatever reason. In my case, because I was really good at school and had intellectually smart. But then on the other hand, you're also at the same time given the message that you're completely worthless and unworthy of being loved. So there must be something wrong with you. And for me, that happened with just basically an absence of affection, normal or usual care, and those type of things. Other people can be more directly or obviously abusive, whatever the case may be. But those mixed messages set up a need as a young person to create essentially a false self. And so in order to maintain that, because we develop that out of a need for personal safety, that's how we do it. Because in my case, the need is to make sure that nobody finds out that horrible secret that there's something wrong with me and I'm not worthy of being loved. And so we tend to gravitate more towards the message of how special we are, because that isn't as painful or hard to, but it's just not as painful. So to do that, to maintain that through, childhood, adolescence, adulthood, takes a lot of mental effort. And we often will internalize that in the sense that it becomes unconscious, but it requires a lot of internal processing or thinking through scenarios, saying if A plus B are happening, that means C, because last time I saw these people expressing emotions to each other, the other person said this thing, and that seemed to get a good response. So now that I'm getting this expressed to me, if I give a response similar to that other one I saw, then I'll probably get a good response, or at least I won't get a bad response, because a bad response would then require more interaction, and more emotional interaction might mean that the other person sees me more and finds out that dark secret that I'm not worthy of being loved. So that's just a little window into the internal workings of the narcissist's mind. But that behaviorally really looks like being self-absorbed, because it's a survival tactic or technique, really, when it comes down to it. And when you're in survival mode, that trumps everything else. So if it's a matter of survival, I'm not even in the brain space to be considering the other people other than how it relates to my survival. So when I'm really triggered into that narcissist thinking, a high stress situation, a high emotional situation, whatever the case may be, when the stakes are high, then I have to do a lot of that internal processing and think about what I'm doing so that my world stays safe. And that appears like being self-absorbed. Okay, number two is manipulative. And I reframe this subtly to unconscious survival strategies. So again, it's certainly not as overtly extreme as, say, like if you were in a kidnap situation or you were a prisoner of war. But the reason I even bring those up is because those are also survival scenarios. And so the way our brain works is, if you've heard of any of the studies of where people are in a real scenario and another group of people are visualizing that scenario, their brain fires the same. So internally, to our brain and nervous system, whether we're actually a prisoner of war or being kidnapped, or whether we've developed these patterns that feel like they're a level of survival, like we do as narcissists, we still operate in that way. So, for example, if you were kidnapped and you were worried that they were going to murder you at the end of this kidnapping experience, you would be trying as hard as you could to manipulate them into not killing you, whether that meant trying to get them to care about you as a person, whether that meant trying to make them happy, whatever the case, distract them so you can escape. Those would be considered manipulations, right? Because it's not honest. You don't really want the kidnapper to like you. But the idea is that if the kidnapper likes you and cares about you, they might not be able to pull the trigger at the end. And so similarly, the narcissist isn't thinking, okay, I want to dominate these people because they suck and I'm great. It's really, I need to make sure I survive in this scenario. And while we're not being kidnapped and not being held prisoners of war, usually, hopefully, the survival process, the survival desire, the survival instinct acts similarly. So when the world around me, particularly in interacting with other humans, seems a threat to my survival, I will naturally, out of survival instinct, do activities that are manipulative, trying to make the scenario, make the environment, make the interaction safe, because I feel like if I can't control it, then there's a risk to my survival. So that's where that manipulative behavior comes from, not just I'm an evil person and I want to dominate you because I'm great and you suck. Though that is commonly how this type of use of the word narcissist is used for, like, oh, narcissist manipulating because they're evil. And it's really a survival technique. Now, that doesn't mean that you have to like it, that you have to agree to it, if you're the other person in the scenario, that you can't draw a line. Those are all within your purview. Go ahead. If that's how you'll do the best and, have the best satisfaction and mental health and all those things. I'm not trying to tell you as the non-narcissists how to interact with them. I'm just giving you a window into what's really going on in there, so you have a sense and understanding that it's not just an evil person trying to do evil things. And then number 3 is uncaring. Kind of like self-absorbed, manipulative, but uncaring. And this is really just kind of a combination of this other two, with the addition of empathy or care being expressed just completely differently, like a completely different language. It kind of makes me think of like if you went on a trip to another country and went to like some, undisturbed tribe and to the Brazilian rainforest and started to hang out with them. Their customs, the way they interact with each other, the way they operate as a group, as families, as a tribe, whatever, would seem very foreign to you. You would not understand, particularly if there was a language barrier and nobody could explain it to you. That's not too dissimilar to being a narcissist in our current world, surrounded by a bunch of non-narcissists. Now, people can explain it, but it's some of those sort of cultural norms, family norms, societal norms, when you're not a narcissist, they kind of just seem so obvious. Like a fish wouldn't be telling another fish, oh yeah, remember you're swimming in water, right? It's just life. It's just how the world works in that framework. For a narcissist, those things that are so familiar to the normies are not familiar in the same way. And so I think for me personally, this has been one of the most important understandings in my journey here, my adventure to understanding myself and my narcissism better and being able to operate and have better relationships in a life that's more satisfying for me and then concurrently the people around me, is that the way I show care is quite different. But without understanding that and then letting people know that, expressing that it's different when it happens in the ways that it happens, it is seen as a total lack of care. And while that may not be pleasant for the people that are receiving the lack of care or not receiving the care that they're wanting, feeling like they need, expecting, that doesn't mean that the narcissist just doesn't care or doesn't have the ability to care. We just show it differently. And so for the narcissist, it's really important to spend a lot of your self-reflection and self-understanding on this, in particular in you, because I would bet that you don't show care exactly the same way I do, even if you're a covert narcissist like me. So for me, some of those things are helping people solve problems, fixing things, being able to look at things strategically, look at the big picture unemotionally. And often, because my brain activates that way so quickly, I don't have the same type of empathy or that natural empathy as normal people, and I show my care differently. Often that happens very quickly. And so a lot of times I've discovered that other people experience that as a total lack of care. Though for me, I do care and I'm trying to interact in a way that's useful, valuable. That's what care is. You see the value in the other person or in the interaction in some way or another, and then you try to, give that value in whatever ways is you can do. And that's a way of caring about the other person. So for me, a lot of times that looks like being, willing to and helping fix things, helping people strategize or sort through the pieces when it's like a highly triggered emotional situation, because I just don't interact with it and get just distracted by the emotions as most people do because I'm not feeling them in the same way, and that type of thing. And the other piece of the uncaring is that there are conventions in our culture and society of things like, if you have a friend and maybe you don't see each other because you don't like live together, work together, or maybe live in different geographic locations, whatever, that there's like a normal natural rhythm of like, oh, I haven't talked to Jimmy in a while, I should give him a call, or something like that. But that doesn't happen naturally for the narcissist, because we are self-absorbed, in other words, processing internally. We are unconsciously working through survival strategies, and we do express that care differently. So that's another place to parse through. Where do you want to land yourself as the narcissist in that? Do you want to exert effort to help those relationships work better by doing things like setting reminders in your phone, like every week, call Jimmy just to say hi? Or the other option is, hey, Jimmy, you're my good friend. I love you. And the way, my brain works, I just won't think of you when you're not in front of me. That doesn't mean when you are in front of me or when I do think of you because something reminds me of you or we're talking, you have my full attention, my full care and all of that. But when you're not in my view in that way, I just really don't think of you. It's not personal. It doesn't mean I don't love you and don't care about you. It's just the way my brain works. I have a extreme case of out of sight, out of mind. And that's very common in the narcissist, that out of sight, out of mind thing. So again, to navigate this as the narcissist really requires some extensive self-examination, so you can really understand how you work. And that's really what a lot of what I'm sharing in all of these videos is about. What I've understood about how I work, how narcissists work, so that you can learn how to and have a more insight into how you work, so that you can navigate your world in a way that's satisfying. Because when we do that, it's like an adventure, right? Because there's a lot of ways that when you're acting as a narcissist unconsciously and just kind of going through life, that things start to break, fall apart, and so forth. And if you don't want that to happen, which I'm done with as far as what I'm able to deal with, I've had enough of that. I want to create a life that I feel free to be myself, and that I feel satisfied, and that I have some nice relationships that are going to look unconventional for sure. But that's okay. I mean, that's the fun of life. We're not all the same. And so our distinctness, our uniqueness is really what we bring to the table that can be exciting or interesting to the other people if they're up for it. I'm not trying to force anybody to stay in relationship with me if it doesn't really work for them, with all the things that I have started to share and understand about myself. So that's those three kind of main things that I notice are attached to that narcissist thing. I mean, there's other ones like evil. I've seen videos about how narcissists are possessed by demons, and we can get into some of that later. But in terms of kind of the main way that narcissist is used as a pejorative in our culture, those are really the three big ones, and how it really works inside as a narcissist. I did want to touch on one other thing related to this. Go ahead and subscribe, give a thumbs up, drop some comments, questions, and so forth. So the other piece of this, which I can't go to the end of this video without mentioning, is when we as a narcissist get those reflections back from our world that you're self-absorbed, you're manipulative, and you're uncaring, if we don't have a strong sense of who we really are, which, I'm working on, and those things still get me sometimes, what happens is it's like anything that you hear over and over and over. Even if you don't believe it to be true at first, if you keep hearing it and you keep hearing it and you keep hearing it, eventually you start to take it on as real. And so that is kind of this negative repeating equation that can happen in the narcissist world that actually leads to a type of PTSD, in my understanding. Because if you're constantly given the message overtly by somebody saying it to you, or not overtly by the way people react to you, subtly often, that you are manipulative, you're uncaring, you're self-absorbed, and those are bad things, it's really easy to take that on and think, oh wow, I am really a bad person because I am self-absorbed and I do manipulate and I am uncaring. And that actually just compounds the narcissistic behavior. Because if those things are true about you, then you really have to control your world to make sure that nobody finds that out. Because, you don't want to be found out. You want to get that positive, or even some people negative, response from your world. That attention is what helps us keep that false sense of self that we develop in our narcissistic upbringing. So hopefully some of these nuances can help you understand better how the narcissist works. Perhaps respond differently. Not that it's your job. I see it as our job, each of us as a narcissist, to really work hard to understand ourselves enough that those messages we don't take on as meaning we're evil or bad. So I wanted to touch on that as well. I'll dive some more into that in some other videos too, how that all works and what we can do strategically to not just take that on and assume that we're bad people as narcissists, because we're not. We're people too. So stereotypes tend to oversimplify, but understanding the full picture can actually lead to real connections. All right? Remember, subscribe, thumbs up, drop some comments below. If you have questions, I'd love to interact. How's this working for you? Have you tried this? What ways do those narcissist behaviors that are labeled as bad show up in you that's different? So we can understand that nuance. Because, I love to learn from what's working for you guys. We're in this together, really working to spread the news that narcissists are people too. All right, take care.